2016. Lisa, would you call the order, or call the roll, please?
Mr. Anderson?
Here.
Mr. Batty?
Here.
Mr. David? Mr. Jessic? Mr. Gary Johnson?
Here.
Mr. LaSalle?
Here.
Mr. McEnroe?
Here.
Mr. Steve Johnson?
Here.
Mr. Mahoney?
Here.
First item is approval of the minutes of December 15th, 2015. Does anybody have any changes, corrections, additions to those minutes? Okay, all in approval, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Nay? Any nays? None? Okay, citizen comments, looks like we don't have any. Oh, agenda analysis. Does anybody have anything they want to address or change to the agenda?
I have an item for a future agenda, but it's not a...
We'll go ahead and go for it now.
Oh, okay. I would like to see us discuss putting a 2-cent a gallon city gas tax up to the commission for their approval. We went through the budget at last meeting, and it became readily apparent from that discussion that for the safety improvements that we'd like to see considered pushed on, there'd be no funding. They just didn't fit into any of the categories. And I'm thinking that this could be under the state statutes could be taken and dedicated to transportation safety improvements, not necessarily big capital projects, but safety improvements, with the criteria that anything that would improve vehicular safety would be eligible. So that might mean being able to fund things like sidewalks for schools, keeping the people out of the street so the cars wouldn't hit them, that sort of thing. And also, I'm thinking that it may facilitate being able to consider some of these requested improvements from the neighborhood on the theory that the city would not be doing 100% of the funding, but would do something like a grant match or something, whereby you come up with, the neighborhood comes up with a certain amount of the costs, and the city would match it or somehow deal with it, so it wouldn't be a 100% city fountain of money, but something that could be used on a small scale. And I would want it to be a small scale because I don't know that we'd want to get him staff all mixed up into another big project, capital project thing to try and manage. It just needs to be small stuff. So that's my
Some
thoughts.
of the things we would have to figure out then would be how much would it cost to administer such a tax?
Mm-hmm.
Would we offset that cost as far as profit?
Right.
How much gasoline is sold within the city of Oregon City?
And my feeling is that 2 cents or somewhere in that neighborhood is within the noise of adjustment on what the cost of fuel is in town, so people won't be going anywhere else to get it, because if you go around town, the prices vary by 2 to 3 cents from station to station anyway.
Bob. Mr. Chairman. So staff, has there been any exploration of this possibility of a gas tax in the past? Do you have some written analysis and stuff like that from prior years that you could bring to the discussion?
Right. We had, if you remember when we looked at the pavement maintenance utility fee, we looked at a variety of options, one of which was the gas tax. And just listening to Henry speak, I was thinking, what's that been, about 6 years ago now, maybe. And so that information is still very, it's applicable to today's scenario. I think in that memo they specifically talked about what a cent would raise in Oregon City, assuming we're talking about a tax only on gas stations within the city limits. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yes, John, I think we have something we can resurrect and either have it updated if it needs to be updated a little bit, and then maybe rather than have, we use the FCS group to do a lot of our financial analysis. They helped with the 5-year paving plan update, and at a minimum have him update the memo if need be, and probably not present it because it costs us a fair amount to have him come to meetings, but we can present the memo and have that for your consideration and discussion without, commitments. I think this group needs to be a little careful about,
Right.
those kind of recommendations, but I think informed might be, be informed about that is definitely within your purview. And then if it falls within, kind of the goals of this program, then there's really not a reason why, probably somebody from this committee wouldn't take something like that to the city commission for a recommendation, as a recommendation.
And I do know that the city of Wood Village has done this in the metro area.
It's been done. It's a good option. It's another option for.
Well, the time is right when gas prices are real low. So.
Yeah, the time is right. Yeah.
Paid $1.67 today.
No kidding.
Well, that was with my 30-cent discount from Freddy's.
Yeah.
Oh, 30 cents.
Yeah.
And
But still,
I know we were actually talking to John Ghilarducci because we've been having this STC discussion, and the fact that there's a sense that on the commercial side, STCs are, especially the transportation STCs, are high for commercial development, and so we talked a little bit about if there was a way to maybe not lower the SDCs, because you kind of need to do that across the board of residential and commercial, and residential seems about appropriate, but there was this idea of buying down SDCs, but in order to buy down, you kind of need a revenue source. So we talked a little bit about gas taxes because, it's not Metolius, it's over by Lake Billy Chinook, that little town over there, Madras. Is that-
Madras or
Madras.
Culver? Madras or Culver?
Madras.
Yeah.
And I think they both John and the FCS group's been working with Madras on a gas tax. So there may be some, fairly recent information that we could pull from some of the information they've been presenting to other customers as well. And so I've got that as a future agenda item, and we'll.
A city like Madras would be very lucrative for them because of all the RVs coming through there. They
You're
fill
right.
100
Yeah.
gallons at a time.
I remember they called us about our pavement program, and I said, it seems like you guys could do pretty well with the gas tax, local gas tax. I think they're looking at both. I think they're looking at a small pavement maintenance fee for their residents and businesses, and then a gas tax in addition to help fund some of their paving needs. So yeah, good suggestion, Henry, and we'll try and bring you some information. And I'll have to think about whether it's it can be an agenda item. Yeah.
Well, I've got one.
Go ahead, Bob.
Before I forget it, I had a roaming around over at Multnomah Village the other day and just happened to talk to one of the residents over there, and they're using lawn signs that are kind of temporary in nature, and they share them between the various neighbors up and down the street for participation in their homeowners association for safe driving. And their streets over there are just atrocious. They really are. They got potholes that have got potholes, and you don't know where the property line starts and the curb ends. I don't think I've ever seen a curb over there, but we got to talking about that, and he says it's a way to keep the homeowners association active and get to know your neighbor, because they'll take a sign on safe driving and they'll share it with a neighbor. It just goes right up the street, and it keeps everybody more or less involved and honest, so to speak. And so I thought that was kind of clever, and I thought maybe that through our homeowners association here, which I guess we kind of have an active program here in the city, that they could do the same thing. it's sort of almost a get to know your neighbor type of thing. Just put it in his lawn, and they in turn put it in the next door neighbor's lawn. You wake up the next morning, you got a sign in your lawn you didn't know you had, but it's a way to get them to participate in our safe driving campaign. So I guess you could get a couple of signs drawn up and printed and give them to the president of the homeowner association, and he can hand them out. So that's something I think maybe we could put on the agenda just for discussion, see if it'd be worth handing to the CIC and say, what do you think?
Another piece of armament for our Drive Safe Oregon City campaign.
What I liked about it was it directly got the neighbors involved with each other and sort of made them accountable. Instead of letting the other guy do it, they get involved, that type of thing.
And besides that, one of the people with sign in the lawn might be the local speeder.
Yeah. Right.
Okay, thank you, Bob. The next item is new business discussion items, introduction of new TAC members. John, do you want to do the honors? Lisa?
I think this is going to be pretty straightforward, but there's not much more to say than what's in the background here. We've got 3, new members, 2 of which have been old members and they're renewed members, maybe. And actually, Jonathan David has been on the advisory committee in the past as well. So you've got Robert Mahoney, who is representing member at large position. And all 3 of these are from January 1st, 2016 through December 31st, 2018. So that's 3 years, right? You're committed.
My wife thinks I'm committed.
Yeah.
Need to be committed anyway.
Well, my wife is going to commit me, so.
Has anybody heard
so-
from Jonathan?
I did right after we made the recommendation to city recorder so that she could have the mayor approve at the first January 6th city commission meeting. And he actually asked me, he followed up with me by email wanting to know what the outcome was. The city recorder said I could tell him at that point. I did. I gave him a copy of the schedule. He seemed excited about it. I've sent several emails, just like with all of you, reminding you of the meeting, but I haven't heard anything.
Maybe he just overlooked the fact that we
Yeah.
start at 6 instead of 7.
We'll find out if he rolls in at 7. So anyway, the 3 members are Robert Mahoney, Henry McEnroth. So thank you, Henry, for applying and being here tonight. And then Jonathan David, who's not here tonight.
Okay. Item 5B, TAC 2016 goals.
So let's see. We did this differently in the past, and we've probably done it several ways over the years. I don't really know, but last couple of years when I've been involved, Bob, we met and we kind of went through kind of some things that we thought would be good goals for the group, and then we came back and we shared those goals, and I think the group said, we'd like to align a little bit more with the city commission goals. So this time we thought maybe we'd share the city commission goals and just, I guess, leave it to you to lead. I don't know if you've already put some thought into goals for 2016, but we haven't met to, collaborate or anything like that at this point. We're just sharing the goals of the city commission and recognizing that we probably need to set some goals for this advisory group for 2016.
Well, I think with all these commission goals, some of them will meld right into our mission as the Transportation Advisory Committee. Others wouldn't be applicable to us at all. For example, the Cove project and the former landfill site, there will be definite transportation issues that we would want to align ourselves with, but also I would encourage, I don't know how you do this, encourage the City Commission to allow presentations to the Transportation Committee early on any of these issues, because we're here to help the Commission, and if we don't get early on participation, we can't help them. And that goes along with many. John, yes?
Yeah, you mentioned when I looked at this and went through and tried to identify the ones that had a transportation element. So I'm suggesting that we could do that here just collectively in a few minutes, and that would narrow the list very quickly and might suggest something we could build on what the commission's doing. So, I mean, if you want, I'll just tell you the ones that I thought were transportation related, either a trail or roadways system.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
So the Cove project, number one, Willamette Falls project, that's a trail, the next one. And then the fourth one down, Beaver Creek transportation. We can agree or disagree on these. And then the second goal, the two at the bottom of the page, maybe it's a stretch on the Public Works Center, but I don't know, I thought it might have some transportation issues. And the deferred maintenance on park trails, which is the bottom. Then on goal number 3, I was wondering what we consider the second one, the transit services, pursue enhancements. I know that when they pushed through the orange line for the light rail, we had a lot of discussions about what the reconfiguration of the buses would be, and I think there was some pluses there. So maybe that one's done, maybe it isn't.
I don't think it's done because they haven't enhanced their transit services in Oregon City except in one place, and that would be the route that goes up through Park Place to the Clackamas County housing area. So they still have, I think we still have a responsibility to
That,
talk to TriMet about other areas that need better service, such as South End Road. That's just the first one that comes to my mind. So I think that could be included.
that one should stay too, because ultimately the orange line's supposed to come to Oregon City, and so there's probably going to be some more changes in the future that will have to be discussed about that.
Right in the Cove.
Yeah, of course, that would have to be approved by the
Right through
voters of
the
the whole
parking lot.
county.
Yeah.
Any extension of that rail would have to be approved.
So then looking at goal number 3, 2 of them seem transit related, the transit service to Oregon City and then the Beaver Creek Road concept. I didn't have any that I noted in 4. And then maybe it's a stretch if you look at goal number 5, the annexation issue. Usually when you start talking annexation, you talk about road alignment, so I put that one in there. So that whittles the list down quite a bit if you just look at those. But somebody else may want to disagree, put something in, take something out. That was the way I looked at it.
I think, John, I think you've hit the nail right on the head. I really do. Sitting on a planning commission like I do, the number one issue that comes up for us on zone changes and comprehensive plan reviews and concept plans is traffic. And this committee here never really gets their oar in the water on the conversation regarding traffic, and we should. We really should. This commission here could be as influential, if not more, than the planning commission, because traffic is the number one issue in this city. And when it comes to land use and big issues like the Cove and the Beaver Creek concept plan and some of those zone changes that are going on out there, this committee here, if it's really going to serve its mission, ought to be brought into the conversation. And I don't like to say it, but we're not. We're not being brought into the conversation.
The Cove project is number one because, was it 400 houses?
Yeah.
And where's all those cars going to go?
Well, I don't think it's a matter of ignoring us per se, because Senate Bill 100 and the state land use goals does include transportation as being a statewide issue, and being a statewide issue, it's also a local issue, and Oregon City is right at the top of the spear. But I think it's a matter of the process. When you come in to make a zone change or a land use application, I think there's 120 days in there that the city must make a decision. And sometimes it's really tight to get that referral in there and to give the applicant due process and to give the city its due, and to get through all the minutia of the bureaucratic steps
in the
that
process.
we have to go through as a city, and the applicant has to go through as an applicant to meet that deadline. And it's kind of tough on the administrators to know who they're going to refer to this and when and what's going to come out of that decision. Because I don't want to see the Planning Commission, the city, and the Transportation Advisory Committee be at odds with each other. I want to see them in lockstep and working together. But how do you do that administratively and make it come out the right way? That's the dilemma as I see it. But I really do think that this transportation issue is one that's not going to get any better. It's going to only get worse unless we really work together. Planning Commission, Transportation, and the City Commission. I really do. If the issue of transportation wasn't high on the agenda like it is, then I wouldn't be making this statement here. But because it's so critical, we've got to come together and work on this as a team.
John, a question. Is there still a pass around on future planning commission items during that 120 days for staff recommendation? As I recall, they used to come around and everybody, all the who had feed into it would write down their statements, their qualifications, whatever they wanted to, for the planning commission, and then the planner would take that and make an initial presentation about the thing. Are they still doing that type of process?
I'm not sure what you mean by pass around, but so what I know, the little I know about the land use process is the TAC is not one of the bodies that a developer is required to. So we're not a land use approval body. This group isn't. Maybe you would argue that should change, but what is actually the CIC and the neighborhoods have some land use kind of. There's a place in the land use approval process whereby they get that information, right? So that's why we had we have representatives or a liaison between this body and the CIC, or this body and the Planning Commission as well. So it would be one more body that would be added for the developer or staff to bring that project forward in a kind of an approval process and try to get some buy-in. Now, the projects that you've mentioned are the Cove and Willamette Falls Legacy Project. Those are obviously probably not the best model. They're the most complicated projects that we have in the city, and they've been around. I mean, Cove has been around for
ages,
8 years, I think, and things haven't really changed other than the developer's proposal on maybe how many apartments. So the apartment numbers kind of go up and down a little bit. The phasing has been very different. But the same concept, which is they're going to take most of their access off of Main Street Extension, that's still in the works. There's still a roundabout in the works, and there's still the future extension of Agnes. Thank you, Martin. To get actually Agnes is a dead end road, and will only be planned for temporary access between what we're calling the North Clackamas Park and the road in front of the treatment plant. That's going to be kind of a escape route in a flooding kind of situation, right? So those have been in the works for a long time. I think trying to, we meet monthly. It's I've got mixed emotions about how much of that, as opposed to keeping this body pretty focused on things like the transportation system plan, concept plans. Trying to run. Then to me, it's back to well, which developments do we run by you? I think if it were specific that we wanted somebody to come and present on the Cove, for instance, that's pretty easy to arrange, to have the developer to come to the TAC and present that. Timing is of the essence. They've actually received their land use approval process, and Bob, I know you've been heavily involved in that through the Planning Commission. so trying to get that in front of this body at the right time because of the various timing of, we got 120 days to get this approved. Yeah, I don't, well, again, it's not a land use approval body. It's more kind of looking, I think, from a higher level than the details of, how big's the roundabout or how wide are the sidewalks or, the kind of things that I'm guessing you're probably most interested in. Is there on-street parking or not, those
I
kind of
just
things.
want to make sure that we don't have a bunch of citizens coming here complaining about no crosswalks, too much speed going by in a certain area, or overcrowded intersection.
Well, we can't guarantee that.
At what
15th
point
Street.
does the access roads get crammed and we need to think about having more?
And,
Yeah, depending on the project, let's say Willamette Falls Legacy Project, we all know there's really only one access point, right? That's 99E. And even though they've got some other provisions for there, we're going to get, Steve, people complaining about delays and traffic disruption. And that's going to happen even when there's multiple access points, right? So, yeah, I think, I don't disagree, though, that our goals shouldn't be somewhat focused on, Goal 1, which includes the Cove and Willamette Falls, and the Beaver Creek area. The concept plan's about to be approved as well. That's another one that has a pretty big transportation element to it. It's got, that plan actually has road connectivities associated with it, and I think there's actually some road sections. Now, again, that's another plan that's been floating around out there. It's been held up in LUBA. They're not proposing a lot of changes. They're just trying to get the old plan adopted. So,
Yeah, that's the significance of traffic, is it can be, as part of the concept plan, appealed to LUBA, goes all the way to the state. That's how important traffic is. And anybody can appeal to LUBA. So.
So if I could add to this discussion about improvements or developments coming into this committee, even though the Transportation Advisory Committee isn't on the list of bodies to approve something, I think the policies and procedures states that we make recommendations. So, and I presume that for all these developments, a traffic study comes in and you review that and approve it.
that's correct.
And I think it'd be appropriate if this committee got information on some of these big developments and what the traffic impacts would be, and what streets on the master plan might be affected by a development. I don't think it's necessary that we, or desirable even, that we make, we have to approve it, but I think that members of the committee are in a position to make some good recommendations, possibly. Unfortunately, the way I see the operation now is that the city goes ahead and does something, and then we, as the traffic committee, get the results of that many years later, where the citizens come to us with the complaints about why did the city do that with our street right next door to it, or something like that. I think, just like Gary said, it would be nice to have some input, since we are an advisory committee. I don't know how far we can go, or what point in the process we could be involved in. It's never happened before.
Mr. Chairman, so looking at this concept, and I think John mentioned it, how would you identify a trigger that would alert staff that this is an item should go to the Transportation Advisory Committee on some developments transportation? Now, we all participated in and made recommendations on the 10-year transportation plan, so I would think that anything that is any project that fits that particular development pattern for roads, etc., we wouldn't need to talk about because we're already into that. It's when they're asking for a modification, and that may mean, you got some neighbors who don't want a through street that was planned as a through street, so then you're changing that from the original plan. Or it may mean that they want higher density and somehow that triggers a change in the road structure from what was in the 10-year plan, and that might trigger it. So we're looking at the exceptions, not the general rule. And I mean, it might be kind of tricky for staff to put their finger on that. And you're always going to have loose ends that 4 or 7 years later, we're talking to folks who say, hey, this didn't work right.
Well,
So-
I think the other thing is I mean, I'll have to talk to Tony a little bit about it, but it may require a code change, because if it's not in the code, if it's not part of the process, we're going to miss them because we've all got busy schedules, or because, trying to get the developer here who's really kind of needing to speak for his own project. I'm assuming you're not asking staff to present their project for them. You'd like to speak to the developer who's developing the project. And, that requires them or their traffic engineer to show up for a meeting, and I need to pursue that a little bit, figure out whether that's
We're also in an environment where I think the city's trying to streamline approval processes,
Yeah.
not add another step, so that's a complication.
Well, I think one good example where we got the Transportation Committee involved would be the roundabout up at Lynn Avenue and up there by the new police station area. We were pretty
That
well
was a
informed
change to the
about
overall
what was going on up there.
I said that was a change to the overall transportation plan. So that is one of the things that you guys
Yeah,
are supposed to comment on.
yeah.
What happens if a developer comes in and says, this is my project, and you guys recommend against it? You're not required for approval for a land use decision. What's his justification for coming here, expending money to a consultant to present? It's not required to.
So I would envision this as approving, even recommending approval of the development, but it would be possibly recommending approval of mitigating traffic factors. Or
That's a good point. Planning Commission's got the ultimate authority through its quasi-judicial requirements, and they alone are the authorizing, approving board. So we'd just be advisory only, and I don't think that I would recommend that the applicant show up here. It'd just be a advise and consent type thing, a memo. What do you think, guys? Here's
Well,
what's
I wouldn't
happening.
want them to come to us for all those planning
No, I
issues. What I was thinking more of is like the Willamette Falls Legacy Project. Now, we're in a early stage, comparatively early stages. It's not in the planning process quite yet, but as transportation issues come up, they could be presented to our committee, and we've got some pretty good brain power here. We could offer ideas to go to when it gets to that point. We would have formed some things. I wouldn't envision anybody.
So you're thinking more regional impact projects?
Oh, absolutely. I had a
I want to get back to Bob before we move on.
Not necessarily at the point where they're in the planning department stages, sometime before that. The Willamette Falls Legacy Project is, well, they've been into the planning process for the zone changes. But now they've got a lot to go forward for transportation issues in that area. If we were informed about some of the goings on, maybe behind the scenes or before the scenes, whatever the case may be, we might be able to offer some input on solutions. Like my failed solution to you, John, the other day about opening up Agnes. I wanted to see what the reason why Agnes could not be opened up. I found out, and so now we know.
I used to drive it all the time.
So, let's not get too far off track on this one here. What I'm hearing is a desire for some level of better input from this committee on projects that maybe are above and beyond what we would typically see in a development of a site. So, you know, I think the Willamette Falls Legacy Project, and first of all, Bob, I want to push back a little bit. I'll have to go back through, but my recollection is they've presented to this committee on the Willamette Falls Legacy Project.
They have.
Yeah.
Now, I don't remember the detail in which, but I know of 3 or 4 traffic issues on 99E that I'm pretty sure they went over. It was the turn onto what would be Water Street, how to develop that. It was the intersection at Main Street in 99E. It was the Railroad Avenue, and that little piece kind of expanding the corner there. And then there was some safety improvements on the south side of the tunnel. That's kind of my recollect. I thought they went through that, so I don't want to leave you or the listening audience with the impression that you're not getting some of those specialized things. I think you are. It's just a matter of whether you're getting all of them. Same with the Cove. I mean, the Cove's been around so long. Maybe it was before your time. Maybe we should refresh that. But yeah, I think it's trying to find that. You know, I don't hear you're asking for code changes necessarily. You just like a little bit more input and a little bit earlier before all the decisions are made. Right. For instance, the Beaver Creek Concept Plan, when they went through that Beaver Creek Concept Plan back 4 years ago before it went to LUBA, TAC had an advisory member just like they did on the, if you remember at the TSP, we had 2 or 3 of you and then we dedicated some meetings to that. Same thing happened with all the concept plans. Bob, weren't you on the South End Concept Plan?
Yes, I was.
And you reported back, and I don't remember Park Place, but that was kind of before my time in this position. So I'm assuming something similar happened. So those concept plans are biggies. Those are big ones where, you know, this body should be at the table in some form or another, whether that's one member or we bring them here and ask them to present. You know, so the Leland Myers, you know, we've tried to incorporate this committee's recommendations and make sure at least you've got that information in front of you. So I don't want to paint a picture of, you know, and somehow we get kind of wrapped up into that because, you know, we've got critical, you know, conversation going on here. But I think this committee does get a lot of this stuff. I think we forget about that sometimes, and sometimes it is maybe a little late. That's the other thing that I know, because before the planning effort, there really isn't a before the planning effort other than, you know, the Cove, you know, it was several pieces of it were done years ago. So now when it kind of came back to life, it did kind of jump right into that planning realm. Yet you guys knew about that long before that. Most projects aren't like that though, right? We don't know about them until they come and they have a pre-app, and then all of a sudden staff starts getting information about that project, and we've got to do some review. So at that point in time, you know, we can try to figure out the process to figure out if this project hits a trigger, for instance, that would make bringing it back. So let me work on that little piece a little bit and figure out, maybe we can put our heads together and kind of come up with a solution. But I do agree, you know, keeping your finger on the pulse of the Cove project, the Willamette Falls Legacy project, and the Beaver Creek industrial areas, that's really what TAC is about, trying to keep their finger on that a little bit and know, you know, where to inject, make a motion for approval even without being asked for it from the commission. You know, we share those. When you make those motions, we take them forward to the city commission or the planning commission so that they get those.
John, what if just to change the atmosphere a little bit, what if this was to be considered more of a neighborhood meeting to be restricted to transportation issues instead of, you know, something special for that? And because it's a public meeting, the public could come in and talk about what they hear on it, and then that could be included as one of those meetings.
Are you talking about individual projects becoming
Well,
here and then those
just
would
the
be
bigger
presented
ones.
to the public?
Just the bigger ones, the ones that have citywide or near citywide impact, like the hospital expansion.
That's the same thing. You can go to a planning commission meeting and get the same information. You can go to a city commission meeting and get the same information. Then you're part of the official record.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know what adding, again, if you tell an applicant, you have to go here, you have to pay a consultant that's charging you $250 an hour
Yeah, it was
to
a
go
rotten
sit here
idea.
and present, they're going to tell you, where's that in the code?
Although, again, the hospital, we've got them on the agenda, and
Yep.
we're hopefully gonna get them scheduled to come. There's that cost on their side of the perspective. You know, I mean, is there some responsibility on this group's part to kind of monitor some of the neighborhood or CIC presentations to make sure we get good representation there? You could argue that, and we've talked about that in some of our past kind of meetings and goals, to assign particular people to attend. I think Blaine was pretty interested in, Blaine Meyer was pretty interested in seeing assignments so that you could go to, who's going to go to the CIC meeting, or who's going to attend the planning commission meeting, for instance. And I don't know. I don't have a good answer, but how about if we're not here to make the goals tonight, right? We're here to talk about general ideas. Is there anything under goal 2 that John said that you feel differently about? We'd love to have the TAC be the the start of the foundation of the public works support group that helps us get that project on its feet, or get its foundation built. So I like that recommendation, John.
Once Lubus sends it back to sends that application back to the city for further reconsideration.
Say that again now.
Once Lubus sends the water board part appeal back to the city for further recommendation.
Yeah, maybe. We'll
Do you
see.
mean the upper yard?
Yeah. That's probably what the outcome will be from that one.
Yeah. If you're a lawyer too, Henry, then I didn't realize that.
That was in the Oregon City paper last week.
Oh. Okay. I believe everything I read in that. All right, what else? I think that, transit service in Oregon City is another good goal. I think we need to keep
Yes.
pushing on that. I agree that there's, I don't know what the solutions are, but whether it be, more max line or enhanced bus service, we're always going to have to keep pushing on that particular item. And by the way, we presented on the TriMet improvements, and it's not just Holcomb. It's up to the community college. I think it's 33 line.
30,
I mean, I think we saw like 73% increase in bus service in Oregon City within the last year. A number of trips. That doesn't mean they're serving South End, but there's a big increase in transit service. So part of this goal from the City Commission's perspective, I think, has been met, but that doesn't mean that, for instance, as they build the new community college, and if we can get Myers Road built, and some of the plans for employment and jobs out in the Beaver Creek concept area, that TriMet's already kind of identified those as future pocket areas that they want to start serving. So I think we've made improvements there, but I don't necessarily think that it still shouldn't remain as a goal of this committee to kind of continue to advocate for more transit in Oregon City.
I think we ought to advocate for a bus line about 6 times a day down through the Conema neighborhood.
Yeah.
You have to go all the way to Canby to turn around.
Well, they can go back up Southwind Road.
That'd be a challenge, wouldn't it?
But their first recommendation would be that we widen the street so the bus could get through.
Yeah. I was just jesting, of course.
Okay.
So
I wasn't quite sure, Bob, when you said that. I was like, I don't know. Good luck with that.
So
All right.
where do we go from here with this now? Do we put a report together to present to the city commission about how we agree with their goals and what we anticipate helping them with, or where do we go from here?
Well, I'm wondering if you as chair and vice chair and, John's brought some good thoughts, maybe there's a subcommittee that kind of sits back and staff can be there, or we don't have to be there, and you kind of bring us back some recommendations, or we collectively work those out, kind of like what we did last time. But I think what I'm hearing is there is some desire to be aligned where it makes sense with the city commission goals.
Right.
So now, the agenda item wasn't, do you agree with the city commission's goals? It was, what are the goals for the TAC? I think agreement or supporting some of the city commission goals is important, but are there any other goals? I don't want to belay the topic, but are there any other
I think the
goals?
2-cent gas tax proposal would be a goal to investigate that.
Or mileage tax,
Well, I don't want to go there.
Why don't we
electric cars.
When we look at alternative funding for transportation
Yeah.
safety, kind of
Yeah.
as a topic,
And-
that way you're not pigeonholed.
Right.
Yeah.
One of the things that I think we should be looking at too is expanding or pushing further ahead on the sidewalks for schools notion, and making sure that we can get kids and parents, at least those that choose to walk, able to get there.
So support the Safe Routes to School program.
Right. And, just try to tie together, if you can, some sort of a package that we can get, so we can get that moving again.
So, again, I wish if we're going to talk about this more, or if you're going to meet together, those measurables goals, might be, instead of, supporting that program, it might be more like, well, we're going to commit to our membership meeting with, the school district, and push, try to get, agreement that, really, Safe Routes to School programs needs to start with the schools. So, we're going to try to work with the school on getting that program in place.
Would they be willing to come in and talk to us here?
We've gone to the schools and met with them and actually tried to get them to push this forward through the parent-teacher organizations. And we've had limited success. So if the committee and a couple of the members, working, you got grandkids that are attending a particular school, you're invested, working through the school and trying to see if they want to become a pilot program. We were moving forward with one of the schools, and then the principal who was really pushing it retired.
John, do you know if the improvements of the sidewalks on Holcomb, were the Safe Routes to Schools involved in that?
I don't know, that happened before I got here. But I was going to ask the question, is there grant money for the Safe Routes to School program?
There is, at times, and it's a long-term project. I'm going to talk a little bit about grants, and it's kind of along the same timeline, but kind of depends on the project. If Safe Routes to School is more about education than it is about capital. But it's a good, you're going to more likely be effective at getting a capital project approved if you have community buy-in, especially Safe Routes to School. So does that make sense? So more often than not, grants that are available for Safe Routes to School are about these more public events that get people to walk their kids to school, or teach their children about the importance, the health benefits of walking to school. They have been able to get funding for, say, a connective sidewalk, but it's competing with a lot of other projects, and that project competes well if there has been a Safe Routes to School plan put in place by the school district, and if you got the neighborhood buy-in through that Safe Routes program. That helps immensely in your scoring. So the Holcomb project, there may have been some involvement, but that was mostly about the city and the county negotiating the city taking over Holcomb Boulevard from the county and putting together, a sidewalk plan that was, I think, vetted through the Transportation Advisory Committee to get sidewalks from top to bottom on Holcomb. We got a little more than half of those built. Mm-hmm. But now, if you remember, we applied for another grant for Holcomb up the hill from there, near the school, and that's still a viable project. It's just finding the right grant that aligns with those, the grant criteria that align with that particular kind of project. And more and more we're just finding that's so competitive. These kind of off the beaten path, Holcomb's a little bit off the beaten path projects that I think there's a thought that the local community ought to contribute more to those than maybe federal or state funding should. But I still think, I don't want to sound discouraging there. I just think it's much more competitive.
For us to really build some connecting sidewalks, we need a funding source, which could go back to the discussion that Henry brought up on a gas tax or some other thing. So we have some seed money,
Yeah.
and then if we had an inventory of the low-hanging fruit, so you could actually show some improvements in some areas, and maybe you'd marry it with an LID in the neighborhood.
Perfect.
I will tell you, we recently just finished a sidewalk inventory, trying to define gaps, small gaps that we could try and fill in with some existing funding. Around schools in particular, we did a search on a 1 mile radius of all the schools, which according to our GIS, apparently everywhere in the city is within a 1 mile radius of a school. The difficulty becomes the other infrastructure improvements that are needed to accommodate the sidewalk typically far outscale what the sidewalk would cost.
Right.
So the perfect example is the elementary school that's out there on South End.
McLaughlin.
Yeah, McLaughlin. So we took a look at that and we said, okay, where can we start doing some infill? And you'd have to pipe in several hundred linear feet of stormwater ditch in order to accommodate the sidewalk space. So you go from it being, a couple dollars a linear foot for concrete to several hundred linear feet of stormwater improvements plus sidewalk improvements in order to make it fit.
Having said that, we've got on our capital plan, and we could utilize existing SDCs for things like Gaffney Lane, that little widening project. We'd like to kind of do that internally, even using our own crews to build that piece. We didn't budget a lot of money, but it's a priority project. We've had some conceptual design work done on it. The other one that is in the capital plan, and it's only partially funded, is sidewalks between Lynn Avenue and Gardner Middle School. There's no sidewalks that connect that route. So middle school students, many of which would probably be old enough to walk to school, don't have a sidewalk to walk on. So they're pretty much either walking on the lawn or they're walking on the outside of
Street.
in the street alongside the cars that are parked at the curb. I don't want to sound discouraging. There is some funding out there, and it may be seed funding that might align well with a local improvement district. It'd be really great to be able to get one of those kind of projects to move. We've heard from this, I think it was the South End or Hazel Grove neighborhood, that wanted improvements on Partlow and South End, right? We took the crosswalks there. Well, Partlow is a great little street that could, it's got a mixed match of sidewalks, a few places where it needs gaps filled. You could, if we could work with that neighborhood, provide some city funding for most of that work, but yet get some buy-in for at least right away and maybe some of the cost of frontage improvements. That'd be a great little project to do an LID on.
Okay, so maybe packaging this in as possible goal is to bring this inventory that Martin said you have to show us what you brainstormed as possible funding of small projects, and then maybe we can get behind that, making a recommendation that be married with an LID or some other alternative, and kick some of these off, get them actually going, even if they're low-hanging fruit.
Yeah. Be great to have a couple of TAC members say, we've studied this, we've identified your neighborhood, and with staff, go to a neighborhood meeting and, sell that idea. So that's another good goal. We're not going to set your goals tonight, but, it's just food for thought. And I think, focusing on schools and trying to get students to schools on foot is a great goal. It's just trying to narrow that to something you can feel like you've accomplished something.
Well, I think our Drive Safe Oregon City plan would be another goal.
Yep.
Yeah, we gotta finish that.
Yeah, we've got to finish it up.
So where are we at with this? Let's get an agenda.
Okay, let's see here.
Tax schedule?
That was just to help you.
That's just information.
Yeah, with your goals.
5C, the Public Works Report.
So we spent a lot of time on that, and I'm going to try and get through these. Most of this is informational or short updates. So Lisa's done a fabulous job. The first update is about the Drive Safe Oregon City. And I'm going to ask Lisa if she doesn't mind to give you an update on kind of the sticker piece. But this brochure here, we vetted it internally. I think we were going to put a different sign on here, or I don't know if we were going to put a different sign on there, but most of this brochure is done. We think it's a great little tool. And this, along with what we've put it on the website, is starting to take form as the Drive Safe Oregon City. But Lisa, you want to give an update on the stickers and where we're at with that?
Sure. So I've been getting quotes on the stickers for the garbage cans and yard debris bins. And it looks like we'll probably go with OC Signs, so a local company who also makes the decals for our city vehicles, so the logos that we have on our vehicles currently. And the owner is looking into a product that will be durable enough for the can, but yet can be power washed by B&B Leasing when they want to remove them and clean the garbage cans. So we're kind of trying to come up with a happy medium, since B&B Leasing doesn't want to do too much work, and so they don't want to have to try to remove these stickers when they, recondition them and send them back out to residents. But at the same time, we want them to be durable, so when they're out in the street, they're not just falling apart off the garbage can. So one issue we're coming up with against is that the garbage cans and the yard debris bins are treated for mold, so they have some sort of chemical on them that makes it hard for stickers to adhere to. So the types of stickers that they would use are obviously a stronger adhesive, and so we're not sure how well we can power wash them off. So the owner, John Graff from OC Signs, is actually going to contact B&B Leasing to see what they use, the decals that they currently use on their garbage cans, to see how well they can power wash them off. If B&B Leasing is willing to go that route and they say they do power wash off well, then we'll go with a stronger sticker that is similar to what they already use on their garbage cans. So we're kind of in limbo right now. I was hoping to be able to tell you we already had some in production, but obviously we want to make sure we have a good product as well to put out there. So in the meantime, and I think I included it in your packet, I made a how-to. John and I discussed putting together a how-to place the decal on your bin, correct placement of the decal as well as correct placement of the can at the curb, so that way we can send those out with the decals, so that way they know how to use them, essentially. So trying to push it forward as best we can to show that we're moving forward with the campaign. So working hard on the advertising piece and advertising the campaign.
You put the sticker on, you can wipe it down a little bit of alcohol and remove the grease and oil.
Oh, that's a good
what
point.
automotive does when they put, those moldings on the side of their
Yeah.
car, you gotta wipe it down.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah.
I have a quick question, Mr. Chairman. Lisa, is this a 8.5 by 11 trifold, or is there 6 panels?
No, it is a trifold. For some reason, I kept reprinting it over and over to try to get it to fit better on the page, but
But yeah.
it wouldn't.
So this is a second trifold then?
No, it's the second side, so it is a trifold.
Okay,
It'll all fit in one double-sided trifold. They're not two separate. Yeah,
Okay.
it just didn't print correctly for me.
So, have we decided, once we decide on the garbage can stickers, how many we're going to have produced initially? Because we were talking about McLaughlin neighborhood being our test area, and we've only got $5,000 in the budget.
Right, so we want to look at pricing. What I asked Lisa to look at was, I think you guys approved one sticker, one of the three, and I'm a little worried about production, and so we're going to ask them to look at 250 of them, and the other option is 500 of them, and also looking at all three of the stickers so that we can get that pricing. And B&B Leasing at one point in time was talking to us about maybe sponsoring some of that, so we'll see how, we haven't circled back with them, but that's our intent, is to look at 500 stickers of each of the three, so it'd be 1,500 stickers total, and seeing what kind of sponsorships we can get from B&B Leasing or anybody else that wants to sponsor, by the way.
All right.
Just out of
We'll
curiosity,
take money from wherever it comes.
and do we
Then
know?
on that, the brochure, have we got pricing on that for, what, 1,000 or 2,000 or?
Well, no, I think we probably will do these in-house,
Yeah.
and
Oh, really?
it'll
Mhm.
probably be part of our copy budget.
Yeah.
Oh,
What-
okay.
Does anybody know how many accounts are in the McLaughlin neighborhood?
You mean how many
Garbage accounts?
households there are?
Yeah, I was just thinking there's no sense making more stickers than there are garbage cans to apply them to.
Well, I guess I'm not sure of that. My sense is this is a long-term project, and we'll have those available for, kind of like for years we had those slow down in my neighborhood signs. We had a bin full of those, and we've been using them for years. So
Yeah.
I think the same would be
The
true.
hope
here.
is that if we have excess, the other neighborhoods are gonna say, hey, how come we didn't get some of these and we want some, and then we'll just reuse them.
Give us all board members one, and then that.
Well, I would dearly love to go to a McLaughlin Neighborhood Association general meeting with 100 of those stickers and say, here you are.
Would you give me one for my
I
garbage
mean, that's
can?
my basic.
So we need to remember that on the kind of distribution plan. I do want to say I've got this on the city commission agenda, and I think I'm doing it as a can't remember if I'm doing it as a work session, but it's on the agenda. So Bob, if you want to be there to present that or sit in the audience during that, we're going to go through kind of a similar update.
Yeah, that's good. I'll let you go for it. I'll be audience.
Okay.
So when you brought the three sticker designs to the committee, the one shown here is different from any of those.
You're right.
But the one here shown in the brochure, I kind of like that one too.
Yeah, we had mixed emotions about that. I think some of this just Lisa's ability to get the right graphic and the right
Yeah.
kind of on us,
Fit.
but I think we do have the eyes up
do.
slow down as one of the other stickers. It's in the rotated form, so it fits on the garbage can.
Yeah.
So we'll still have three. We thought that they all had their space, and we didn't want people to get bored with our stickers, so we were thinking.
Is this in your job description, Lisa?
So John, is
All
your
others.
is your presentation then going to be our attempt at getting the official
right?
stamp of approval from the? Okay, good, great.
And just to follow up with Gary, on the website, when I updated the website, there's all three graphics. So you can see, I'm just kind of trying to get them all out there. So you'll find them in different places. But the website has one of each for you to take a look at.
All right, if there's no more questions, we'll go on to the next one, which is informational. The next two are actually both informational. We get a lot of requests for speeding, and Lisa found this document on the ODOT website about setting speed limits and how that process happens and what they do to when they get a request. And I think one of the questions that's come up, with the Lynn Avenue group was, well, yeah, the speed study said it was a certain speed, but the staff didn't really have to take that recommendation. They could have pushed back on that, and they didn't. And wasn't here. I think there was a lot of discussion about that speed study, to be honest with you. But at the end of the day, I think that's still true. We ask the state to do a speed study, and they look at many factors. If we think they've missed something and we want to push back on their results, we can. They may tell us we're wrong, and that's happened before. I think we pushed on Beaver Creek Road years ago. And I remember going to that hearing and kind of got scolded that we even brought it before them. But they did it in a nice way. But I think the state staff that look at traffic studies put a lot of due diligence into those. There's only a couple of folks that do them. Maybe one guy. One guy. I'm sure he's got some support. But so I think it's just important for folks to know that speeds limits in Oregon City aren't just kind of something that we pick a number. They're usually based on initially, like Myers Road, for instance, we picked a design study speed or design speed.
Design speed limit.
To design the curvature in a way. So sometimes they're settled on that. Other times it's, more often than not, it's different than that. It's basically you got a new piece of roadway or a recompleted piece of roadway, and you ask the state to come in and look at that.
I think the new piece of information on that is, on the second page, those heading says who decides, and then speed zone review panel.
Yep.
I guess that's what you were alluding to. So locals can take it to that.
Right. The agency can, if we felt strongly that they missed the speed limit on Lynn Avenue, for instance, which has been a pretty hot topic, then
It's good for this committee to know that that's available.
right. Yep.
John, when there's litigation involved in a car crash, do the attorneys go back and review these changes or these recommendations regarding speed to see if there's a little loophole in there that they can lay the blame on somebody?
Bob, I wish, I don't know if Martin's got experience with that, but I'll tell you that I have never, since I've been involved with this city, known of a traffic accident lawsuit that has done something like that.
Is that right?
But it wouldn't surprise me. I think it depends on the seriousness of the incident. They probably would look to the agency if there was confusion in the field about what the signage would be. They would probably look to that past study to see if the city had been directed to change that study or to implement. If the city had implemented what was recommended in the speed study, that wouldn't surprise me a bit. But I don't know. I'm not an attorney. Haven't been involved in a case that's involved that. I don't know if you have.
I wasn't involved in it. I know of a case in Florida where that was the exact incident where the state had made a recommendation on the speed posting. The local jurisdiction disagreed. They didn't change it. Accident occurred, and the local jurisdiction got sued and lost because they had conflicting opinions as to what the state had made recommendations towards. This was back in 06, 07.
My guess is that could happen either way.
Yeah.
If they set it lower and they recommended something higher.
Yeah, that's the danger with asking for a state evaluation is that whether it goes up or down, you have to be prepared to say, well, we're going to accept it or disagree, and then someone made a decision.
Any other questions about that? The last one is another piece of information that came up in it's called the T2 Transfer Center. They produce a lot of safety information, and it came across my desk, and I thought you might appreciate knowing. We've had some sidewalk crosswalk sting activities in Oregon City over the last few years, and people still forget what they can and can't do as a pedestrian, or what they should or shouldn't do as a driver to yield to those pedestrians. So this basically, I like some of the information. Since 2009 to 2013, an average of 798 pedestrians were injured. Now, the fact that they said an average threw me a little bit. I think the better fact is 52 were killed in motor vehicle crashes each year. So I'm guessing that average is that many per year. And a quarter of those who were struck by vehicles hit while they were in the crosswalk. So a lot of those that were hit were actually in a crosswalk when they were hit, which is unfortunate. I think Oregon City does a really good job of marking its crosswalks and keeping them visible for folks. And so, you know, people should know that if there's a pedestrian really at that point on a striped crosswalk, where they're at the edge, face a curb, if you will, and stepping out into that, you're to yield to that, and you're to stay yield to that until that person moves outside the travel lane that you're turning into or that you're in, and beyond. Another, this publication says 6 feet, so I'm assuming that's right, into the next lane. And so anyway, just kind of sharing that little piece. The other thing is, if it's not a striped crosswalk, the pedestrian doesn't have as much protection in that unstriped crosswalk as they would if it was a striped crosswalk.
But he's not as sure and won't step out there.
But you're not sure he won't. And in fact, you know, you should, as a pedestrian, have the ability to step out when there's plenty of sight distance and stopping distance for that vehicle. So, yeah. So anyway, just some good information there. Not a lot to talk through, other than I don't think the listening public always gets that message. And so there's good information here for them.
Yeah, could I comment on this brochure? You mentioned that a pedestrian doesn't have as much protection in an unmarked crosswalk as he does in a marked crosswalk. That's probably true, because the car is maybe less likely to stop for him, but his legal rights are the same in both a marked and an unmarked crosswalk.
It's definitely true at an intersection. The exceptions would be, like we've got, I'm thinking of Beaver Creek and Milne. There's some signage there that closes a particular leg of that from pedestrian use. In that case, they wouldn't have, it's not striped, and they wouldn't have the same.
Okay.
And the other is those mid-block crosswalks. Well, if it's not, all mid-block crosswalks should be marked. Otherwise, there's no crosswalk there.
You're
So-
jaywalking.
Yeah, you're jaywalking at that point. But yeah, you're right. In most cases, you've got the same protection.
Yeah, the Oregon City Municipal Code also has a little section on jaywalking. And it says in there that it's unlawful for any pedestrian to cross any of the streets in the city or any other place than the regular intersection crossing in line with the property line of the street on an area which would be covered by the sidewalk if extended. So I'm wondering if technically mid-block marked crosswalks are illegal to cross in Oregon City because of this ordinance.
Couldn't be.
It shouldn't be.
Yeah, I would be surprised if they would. Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to. Which ordinance is that?
10.28.010.
I'll read it again in my privacy of my office, and that way I can fully comprehend what exactly it means.
Actually, I was going to propose a future agenda item regarding this. So I can bring it up now, or what I wanted to do is have an agenda item for proposed amendments to this section. And what I'd like to see as backup is this ordinance, and then some opinion about the mid-block crosswalks, whether it's unlawful to cross in the mid-block marked crosswalk because of this ordinance. And then I'd rather see an ordinance similar to some of the other cities in Oregon, well, like Portland, and they have their ordinance says that it's illegal to cross a street, jaywalk, if you're within 450 feet or so of an intersection. And I think they also address marked crosswalks. So I'd rather see Oregon City's ordinance more in line with that. Because there is a practical problem too, like over at on Warner Milne. There's a you have an intersection at Leland and then Beaver Creek, which is quite a long distance apart, and not quite halfway, but in between them, and there's no other intersecting public streets. There's a bus stop. It's across from approximately the Oregon State Extension. So, and the other side is just a vacant field. So, people almost have to jaywalk according to this definition if they're going to use that bus stop.
Or if you want to go a little further, you can look at the parking lot for the Pioneer Center, and with the entrance on the other side of the street, and nobody goes over to the corner and crosses it, and then goes back to the entrance to the Pioneer Center. Yeah.
And they would for library parking too. They park around the library and then jaywalk to get to the library.
Exactly.
Yeah. Where I see a lot of the confusion for the mid-block crosswalks is the fact that so many of our intersections don't line up.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking specifically Mount Hood Street, where it hits Malal Avenue, right by the grocery outlet. You've got a crossing that is at an intersection on one side and mid-block on the other. And good luck getting across that one, because there's, completely unscientific, I would say less than 20% compliance with, like that crosswalk.
I think that still counts as an intersection, though, even if it's a T type of intersection.
I think you're right. I think that one that you're talking about went through a fair amount of consideration, and there wasn't a perfect solution or a solution that met any particular standard, so they picked the place where they thought it was most used and in the way that they could most safely do that. That's one of the locations where we're actually hoping to get some funding, and we've actually applied for, I don't know, well, maybe I should mention it, but I skipped the 10th Street project, but or the Main Street project, but yeah, that's one of the other grant applications that the city's a part of, and we've got 6 rapid flashing beacon crosswalk locations in the city, and that's one of the locations where we'd like to put one in, and we're regionally, and so we've applied with several other agencies in Clackamas County, and I think there's like 40 of them in total, and we've got like 6 in our town that we're hoping to get approved for that 2018 to 2021 STIP.
Another thing that might improve safety at that specific location is removing the trees from the median at that point, because I feel they really hamper visibility. And I know at least one of them was partially removed by traffic already.
Yeah, it's funny you should mention that, because I saw a driver get surprised by that crosswalk just the other day. Yeah.
Like, I live quite near there.
Oh,
I will actually go the extra block and just cross at the signalized light at Hilda Homes.
yeah.
We put so much emphasis on speeding in our traffic safety program, car versus car. But really what we're talking about is pedestrian safety,
Oh, absolutely.
and human safety. And my goodness, the pedestrian's going to lose that battle every time.
Well, the thing is that the emphasis is put on the driver's responsibilities, but the pedestrians also have some
Yeah.
responsibilities.
Well, at night, going up Fifth Street, where it turns into Lynn, somebody on a rainy night, well, any night, wearing dark clothing, I mean, you're on them right now. And my wife said, "Did you see him or her?" And I said, "No, I did not." And it was close.
No, it's just the same handout.
Oh, was it movie night?
Yeah, moving on.
Warming it up.
Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers.
Star Wars is showing tonight. I skipped the Main Street thing, and I just really kind of wanted to have it up on the screen so that we could. You've got them in front of you, so you don't really need them. But just an update on our effort to try to secure funding for the next 5 blocks of Main Street between 10th and 15th. Probably some of you have seen this project before. We revamped it and resubmitted to the state for additional funding. And so this handout that you have here does a excellent job of kind of suggesting what the project is and why it meets the criteria that they included in this particular grant application. So the city, it's a $2.4 million project, and I believe we're asking for $1.6 million. The balance, 800,000, will come from things like our pavement maintenance fee, our system development charges, those kind of things to help cover those costs. There might even be a local contribution from those folks who are fronting that. We've got some time to get that figured out, but
Bake sale.
yeah, we'll do a big bake sale. I think what's important for you to know is that in the whole region, which includes Washington County, Multnomah County, and a section of Hood County, this particular pot of money is one of the few that's available for the cities and local agencies to fund these kinds of projects. It's less than 11 million. I think it's 10.6 million. And the region who submitted applications, there was 40 projects. No, there was $40 million asked. Not 40 projects, $40 million worth of ask. I think that was about 20 projects. And so very competitive. Within the county, I think Clackamas County had the most projects submitted, and there was like 20 million asked out of Clackamas County. And one of those projects is that flashing beacon project. So we've got really kind of two projects in the hat. Really, this one's the one that I'm most hoping is successful. As much as we need those rapid flashing beacons in certain places, I think there's this one here would do a lot for the downtown, for jobs in Oregon City, and for improvements to the downtown area. And with the transit center right in the middle of that project, we've talked at this committee about some of the safety concerns with buses parking on the curb type sidewalks and pedestrians trying to meander through them to get across to the county offices or various locations along that stretch of Main Street. So this project would include some enhancements to that intersection that we think would make it safer. Doesn't necessarily mean less buses there or those kind of things, but trying to figure out, can we include a curb extension for something that maybe gets that pedestrian out from behind the bus, those kind of things. So anyway, I'm not going to put a lot of discussion into this. This brochure has got most of the information that you'd need to know. We sent this to the Region 1 Area Commission on Transportation. There's 6 members from Clackamas County, none of which live in Oregon City or have businesses in Oregon City. So trying to influence them is our challenge because, like I said, there's quite a few projects in the county. And, I don't know how good we'll be represented, to be honest with you. So trying to do the best job we can to showcase the project and how it meets the criteria is pretty important for us.
John, when you do that, do you take an elected official with you to make a presentation or to add to your presentation? How's that done?
Well, for this, we submitted our application. So the application is much longer than this brochure, and they've got specific criteria that they've asked for, so we submit that. And then the county meets monthly as what they call the Clackamas County Coordinating Committee, and it's got members from pretty much all the cities in the county of any size, all the transit providers, so Canby Cat, Wilsonville Smart is there, TriMet is there. There's even representatives from the regional water providers, and any wastewater providers, the hamlets. There's a representative from the hamlets, and so it's a pretty diverse group of people, and our mayor sits on that committee. So I did the presentation on this. It was 5 minutes of just discussion.
How much staff time?
That's what everybody else had as well.
How long does it take to put an application together?
You don't want to know.
It can take a while.
In other words, a lot of staff time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's part of the challenge that we don't. We work pretty hard at picking a project that fit the criteria, and I know it's a biased opinion. The other projects don't hit the criteria as well as our project does. So I think it should fare well, but it is political. So I don't know.
John, when does the funding award occur? When do you get this?
So this is for funding for 2018 to 2021. That's how far out we're planning. And what, I mean, there may be some other funding opportunities, but I'm going to be pretty discouraged if we don't hit this one, because we missed the last one too.
That was on Molalla Avenue, wasn't it?
I can't remember if it was a Malala Avenue or a different project. But
It was the Malala.
I think you brought up the criteria, though,
Metro.
on that one too, that Oregon City has been very careful to follow the criteria, and other jurisdictions not
Yeah.
necessarily so.
and
Is there
I'm
any?
gonna take a shot at the county here. At that C4 meeting, before the C4 meeting, they tried to, what I saw is kind of carve out the criteria that maybe mattered a little bit more to specific projects than to ours. And maybe that's just my own kind of paranoia, but the state provided good direction on criteria, and it would be okay with me if they changed that criteria before we put all the effort into picking a project, because then we might pick a different project and apply it in a different way. But to do it after the fact is just frustrating for me, and I think they couched it as, oh no, we're just trying to provide a little more definition on the criteria, but that wasn't really part of the process. So I hope that they come down with the right decision, which would be a decision
Are there any
for Oregon City.
are there any Sunrise Corridor projects in there?
There are.
I think they might get funded.
We'll see. Yeah, I think the county has a pretty big project which puts a wider bridge on Sunnyside Road that crosses 205. Probably not a bad project. I hear if you're trying to, especially if you're a bicyclist and trying to get from one side of 205 to the other, there's probably a need for that. But it doesn't meet the criteria like ours meets the criteria. I'll tell you that much. So let's see, there's one more. Oh, we're going to go do winter weather. You want to?
Yeah. So just an update on the winter weather. So we did have a short spell of some winter weather. We got several calls as to, hey, can you get the de-icers out? Can you get the plows out? To be honest with you, what we were experiencing would have caused a bigger problem than if we just waited it out, which was probably the safest and most rational course. A couple things that we pointed out to some residents in emails is why we weren't actively de-icing with a 1/4 inch of snow. The actual de-icer, it's magnesium chloride. It's environmentally the most environmentally friendly product out there, but it is still a chemical that you're putting into the water column. And applying de-icer in conditions like that actually makes the road slipperier. We did go out before the snowstorm came in that previous week. We did a preventative de-icing, and that kind of helps with keeping the roads from icing over. A lot of people go, why are you doing more de-icing? Well, because the de-icer that we put down, if it's going to rain the next day, it's just a waste of money, and again, you're putting the product straight into the water column. So we try and selectively pick, watch the weather pattern, see how cold it's going to get, and make a decision as to whether we're going to apply de-icer. So within the department, there are 4 people who can make the decision. We're 2 of them. Matt Pallison, our streets supervisor, is another one, and Jason Thornburg, our streets lead man. Those 4 individuals can collectively make a decision that we're gonna go and conduct some of our winter ops. If anybody's interested in the plan or more of this information, it is all available on the webpage. There is a formalized winter response plan as to how we're going to deal with winter weather. And the only other thing that I'll give you on the Public Works update is we have been incredibly busy the last month. So the rain event that we had on December 7th, that prolonged itself with some other events that have been going on in the city since then, and we just finished a tour of several potential project areas with FEMA and state OEM representatives, and we're looking at potential cost reimbursements in the neighborhood of about $250,000 to the city for damages to infrastructure. Let you know how that comes. Wheels of bureaucracy spin slowly, and the wheels of FEMA spin even slower.
Much slower.
Yeah, but Martin's done an excellent job getting us through both the landslide. We implemented our incident command center up at the fire station up here. You know, Martin's got years of experience with emergency management. He's active duty, so he speaks the acronyms really, really well. But it was fun to. It was not a fun situation,
You
but
thought that was fun, buddy.
it was fun to participate and kind of watch the ICS command system work, and have Martin there to lead us through the discussions and think about. Really, it was a pretty big training exercise, real life training exercise.
Yeah, on the job.
For all of us. And we had our interim city manager there, our police chief. Wasn't really a big fire event, so there wasn't a lot of fire, but all the social services and emergency services from the county. And we met daily, often twice daily, when we were kind of in the heat of the battle of trying to figure out, first of all, are these dangerous buildings or not? Do we have to evacuate, and if so, when? Now that we've evacuated, where are they going to go? The Red Cross was amazing. I couldn't believe it. In 3 hours, they were here to set up their shelter, and they had, luckily school was out, so the high school was helpful, and it was an experience that I hope we don't have to go through often, but having gone through it, with Martin in particular at the helm of that, kind of orchestrating that whole thing, everybody was contributing in a big way, but having someone like Martin who could kind of tell you, that's not really your lane, you need to let somebody else take that position because that's what they're supposed to be doing. And then many of us hadn't done, social services in particular. We had very little experience with social services, yet we found ourselves having to figure out how to house folks that were, that demographics in the Forest Edge apartments is some of our more needy folks. So, yeah, it was an experience, and I think it's winding down to a point where it's it's become relatively manageable. The community and the mayor and the commission have been very supportive, and so, there's some hardship associated with being removed from your home or having to get out of your home. But given the situation and the risk of, either some real damage, an earthquake, I'm pretty sure when an earthquake hits, that thing's going to come tumbling.
Who gave that command, John?
Which command was that?
It was to evacuate and...
It was a group decision by the command staff.
Yeah. We looked to the building official. Public Works was involved. We had a geotech assessment.
Police involved.
Police was
They're
involved.
all
They
part
were
of the command staff. Yeah.
they were very helpful. Door to door kind of door hangers and notice, kind of hand holding through that whole process.
Communication a big problem?
No, we didn't. Phones were working.
We had ham radio ready though.
Did you?
Yeah, we didn't need it.
Any handheld?
No, just cell phones.
Cell phone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, John overemphasizes my involvement, and it really wasn't that big. B, we actually have a very interesting discussion topic that we've pitched for the upcoming American Public Works Association conference this spring. So the focus is emergency management and public works. So I've written an abstract that the working title is, and I wrote it from John's perspective, how to transition from being public works director to incident commander to public information officer to logistics chief to social worker, and then make it back to public works director. Because in the last 3 weeks, I
And
think
keep
John
your
has
marriage
sat-
together.
I'm sorry?
And still keep your marriage together.
Yeah, it suffered, believe me.
Yeah. In the last 3 weeks, John's respectively sat in every one of those seats.
John, did you get to wear a hat?
We have vests. We didn't wear
Hard hat, did you?
Hard hat?
You gotta have a
I
hard
did
hat.
wear my hard hat, mostly because it was raining out.
How
So
about
there's
the
one.
fire department. Was the fire department involved?
Yes and no. They were there at ready, but it really wasn't. It wasn't like we were dealing with evacuations of folks that had much in the way of medical needs. right?
What about natural gas leaks and stuff?
No, nothing like that.
Was
We
it
didn't
right?
have those kind of leaks.
Oh.
We didn't have threat of fire. They were pretty much on standby, and they were monitoring the site like the rest of us were, but it wasn't really heavy with police with fire. It was very heavy with police, and you know, but I'm glad it wasn't heavy with fire department because that just means more, you know, life risk kind of scenarios.
Any of
They'll
those,
block the road.
any of those apartments still occupied down there?
No,
They're all.
No.
And how many units are we talking about?
52.
52.
52 units.
133 individuals.
Yeah, there's actually we evacuated some at the Berry Hill Apartments, which is up on top. There was 10 units up there, an 8-plex and a duplex, and then the rest are in 4 buildings down below. Kind of what's left on the lower site for the Forest Edge Apartments, and they're all still declared
Unsafe buildings.
unsafe buildings.
We have a drone video. It's
Yeah,
pretty cool.
yeah. Martin drove the drone, I think.
Flew, and no,
Flew.
it wasn't me.
Oh yeah, flew the drone. So there's only one little item left, I think, on our agenda, and that was really just an email. I just wanted to remind you and others that not all problems have to come through the TAC. Our staff deal with these pretty regularly, so when people email us or send us an indication that, hey, we've got a problem here. So this is just an example of Matt Pullison, who's our street supervisor, a response to a site distance issue, and he took care of it. He didn't really think to come to the TAC, which is probably the way it should work. He just took care of it.
It was good. No, I think it was handled at the right level there.
Yeah, it looked pretty obvious. So why have a committee to delay it?
Yeah, sometimes that makes sense. That's it for us.
Okay, future agenda items, I have gas tax and proposed amendment to the ordinance regarding the mid-block crosswalk. Does anybody else have any future agenda items I'd like to put up? Of course, we always have our traffic safety issue on the agenda. I have one item, Martin, that will be pretty cheap. Remember the landslide there on the bottom of Holcomb Boulevard?
Yep.
Now they've got those concrete barriers,
Jersey curbs.
and they also have the rubber bumper at the end of it.
Yep.
Is there any possibility they could put something reflective
Taping on that?
those things?
Yeah.
Because I noticed coming around there in the dark this evening, it's pretty close to the edge of the street.
I get that taken care of.
Thank you.
Bob, I know some of the members weren't on this advisory committee when we did the 10-year transportation plan. Is there a reasonable time to maybe have staff review that and update it for everybody? I mean, when you have a relatively light agenda some night, just put that in there and somehow give us the big picture look again. And
The TSP?
yeah.
Yeah.
Good idea.
Anything else from anybody? This meeting's adjourned.